Welcome into NFL on 365. I am Grayson Grundhoefer, and today we're going to be talking about Baker Mayfield. Why are we talking about Baker Mayfield? Oh yeah, that's right, because the Carolina Panthers are back involved with the former number one overall pick. Let's talk about it next. Okay, everyone, so let's talk about this Baker Mayfield drama. Obviously, it's been dramatic since the offseason. Deshaun Watson ends up going to Cleveland. Baker publicly bashes the organization, talks about how he essentially doesn't want to play in Cleveland anymore because they've brought in his replacement. And things have just been kind of weird since then. And I will say, since the offseason, a lot of things have kind of been quiet. And we've been waiting to figure out what's going to happen with Baker. There's a few other not free agents who everyone's talking about possibly getting traded, like Jimmy Garoppolo. But Baker is at the top of that list. And obviously, he's still a young quarterback, a guy that I think a lot of franchises still value as a potential franchise quarterback. Is he a franchise quarterback? Probably not. But I think some organizations could argue that there is potential there. So there's been some roadblocks, and Carolina, I know, has been a team that has been involved since the beginning. They had really bad quarterback play last year. Sam Darnold was not very good. They had to go to P.J. Walker for stretches. I mean, they were just kind of in a bad situation in general as a team, and then the quarterback position did not help that. Now they're at a point where Matt Rhule is basically fighting for his job. And really, they need a successful year. You're going to get Christian McCaffrey back this season. I mean, you're hoping that he stays healthy for the year. They've built the offensive line a little bit. Their defense has shown some flashes at times. You got one of the best young pass rushers in the game in Brian Burns. But they really need an anchor at the quarterback position. They need a guy who's going to come in, provide stability, leadership, and a winning attitude/winning history. And the question is Baker Mayfield that guy? So the report and the reason we're talking about this week is because CBS Sports writer Jonathan Jones, he called the Panthers' hunt for Baker Mayfield urgent. That's the quote. Urgent. There's urgency in the Panthers organization to get a deal done to get Baker Mayfield on their roster. And it makes total sense. I think a lot of people feel like this team is not that far away from competing. The problem is a lot of teams in the NFL can say they're not far away from competing if they were to add Patrick Mahomes. That's just not realistic. But adding a guy like Baker feels like he could raise the ceiling. And even if it's not the ceiling of this team, at least the floor of this team going forward. A huge sticky point in kind of everything that has happened here between these two teams is the $18.9 million that Baker Mayfield is owed in 2022. So that's the issue. The Panthers want the Browns to pay all of it or pay a lot of it, and the Browns don't want to pay any of it. And that's where we're at. And that's why there's been a huge problem. But I think this report of urgency makes me think that, okay, it looks like the Panthers are going to settle on some things and maybe make some things happen. So here are the reasons why. The second round, or their second overall quarterback on the depth chart, is Matt Corral, a third-round draft pick. Sam Darnold is the starter right now. Matt Rhule seemed to be really happy with Darnold's practice performance at the end of OTAs last week, called it Sam Darnold's best practices since he has been in Carolina. This report doesn't seem like that. This report sounds to me like they're still looking to upgrade, and that's fine. Every organization should try to upgrade. So let's talk about Baker really quick. Year one and year three, his rookie year and then his third year in the league, he was sacked 26 or less times. During that stretch, he completed 63% of his passes, threw 53 touchdowns, had 22 interceptions, and they won 7 and 11 wins with him at quarterback. That's year one and year three. Year 2 and 4, he was sacked 40 plus times. And during that stretch, he completed only 60% of his passes, 39 touchdowns, 34 interceptions, and 6 wins in each of those seasons. There's a strong correlation there. Can you protect Baker? Because if you can, he'll actually stay healthy, and he might be able to win you games. I also think the correlation is in the run game. The Browns have been able to run the football, and I think Carolina will be able to run the football. with, of course, Christian McCaffrey. They also brought in Deontay Foreman. They have Chuba Hubbard. They'll be able to run the ball to some extent. Maybe not to the level of Cleveland, but I think it will take some pressure off of Baker. Looking at Sam Darnold, he was sacked 35 times in 12 games last year. That is on pace for over 50 sacks in a season. That is not good, and that is not ideal for what Baker needs at his next stop. Now, the Panthers have tried to address the offensive line. Not having Christian McCaffrey for a majority of the year also hurts Darnold and would help Baker because you have a check down guy that you feel really confident about. So that's just one part of this. And I think that the sacks are kind of one of those numbers that maybe can fluctuate depending on game control, circumstances of the game. So maybe it gets better for Baker, but it's still a little alarming as to how much success would he really have in Carolina. Looking at their best seasons, Sam Darnold versus Baker. Sam Darnold's best year came in 2019. He completed 62% of his passes. His team went 7-6. He threw for 3,024 yards, 19 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. His QBR was 45.6. That's his best year. That's the top of where Sam Darnold has been. Now, he's been on some bad teams, but still, that's the best he's ever been in the league. Baker's best year was in 2020. They went 11-5. He completed 63% of his passes, 3,563 yards, 26 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions. He had a 65.5 QBR. Clear upgrade there. Baker's best year is far better than Darnold's. Baker's was more recent. And I think we can probably chalk up last year's performance to injuries, a horrible offensive line, and really just a bad situation in Cleveland at the end of the day. Also, don't forget that when Baker got to Cleveland, they were 0-16 the year before he was starting quarterback there, and he immediately got them to 7 wins. That's pretty remarkable. Now, obviously, things tailed off, but I think you also have to attribute that to the fact that they started at 0-16. So that roster was really never built to a point where they were going to contend, and still in 2020, got them to 11 wins. Very impressive. I think Baker is a clear upgrade over Sam Darnold at this point in their careers, and I think that is why Matt Rhule and, Carolina in general is looking at potentially adding Baker Mayfield. This is a huge storyline. I think it would help the careers of DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson if he elects not to retire, Christian McCaffrey. I think it would mean some very good things for for Carolina, and I think it would raise their ceiling as well heading in to next season. But for Grayson Grundhoefer, this has been NFL on 365 Sports. Talk to you next week.